It is now time for us to begin our beginner's Hebrew revision lesson. Let us go to God in prayer. Father in heaven, we pray for every single student. May you give to each person a recollection, a remembrance of everything that they have learned, and may you help everyone to have already started the revision of each of the courses in preparation for the final exam in the courses that are going to be given next week. We pray, dear Father, that you will help them not to be nervous and help them, dear Lord, to trust in you with all their heart, not lean on their own understanding. And may you bring each of them through so that they will do well. We pray that you will be with me as I lead the students through a revision of the different lessons we have looked at this trimester. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, just as I said concerning the Beginner's Apologetics Year 2 revision, the same applies to the Beginner's Hebrew Language Year 2 revision. All you need is this one PowerPoint that is on the screen, which I sent to you on Friday, November 19. But if you don't remember receiving it, let me know. Whatever revision lesson you don't remember receiving, just let me know so that I can send it to you, because the sooner you get it is the more advantageous it will be for you. So as I go through this day with the different lessons, whatever it is you don't have, let me know in each of the classes. Yeah, I sent out an email, I believe it was yesterday, asking if you have any problem finding a particular revision lesson, let me know what lesson it is. I mean, what course it is, so I could send it to you. So it's very important.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to your emails if there is a problem and you cannot find a particular revision lesson. So this is the revision of lesson 14, Dagesh Lene, lesson 15, Dagesh Forte, lesson 16, Mapik, lesson 17, Raphael, Quiescent Letters, Gutturals, Resh, and lesson 18, Correction of Written Letters. Sorry, it's not supposed to be correction of written letters, it's correction of written errors. And the definite article, correction of written errors. Well, I made an error right there in the lesson that is entitled Correction of Written Errors. Imagine that. Correction of written errors and the definite article. Okay, I'm trying to change the screen. All right, let me see what I can do to change the screen. Okay, good, very good. Okay, so we begin with Dagesh Lene. Dagesh means piercing. Dagesh is a dot in the heart of a consonant. Lene means weak. Now these are the consonants that Dagesh Lene may go in. Dagesh Lene may not go in any other consonant. Dagesh Lene can only go in Vaith, Rimmel, Thalith, Kaf, Fe, and Thou. And when Dagesh Lene goes into them, it hardens the sound, as I will be showing in the next slide, so that Vaith becomes Baith, Rimmel becomes Gimel, Thaleth becomes Daleth, Kaf becomes Kaf. I can hardly notice any difference. Fe becomes Pei, and Thou becomes Tau. There is a memory device that the Hebrew grammars have for remembering these 6 letters. They call it Begath Kefath. Begath Kefath. And so you have Begath Kefath. Vaith, Rimmel, Thaleth, Kaf, Ve, Thou. Now, Dagesh Leni hardens the sound of a consonant so that it changes the pronunciation of the consonant. For example, the consonant Vaith, without the dot in the heart or the middle of it, is to be pronounced as V, as a V, such as in van. But when it has the dot in the heart or the middle of it, it is to be pronounced B, as in B, such as in bathroom. Another example is the consonant Fe. Without the dot in the heart or the middle of it, it is pronounced as PH, such as in telephone, or as the F in fan. But when it has the dot in the heart or the middle of it, it is to be pronounced as P, such as in path. So what is the effect of Dagesh Leni on a letter? It hardens the sound of a consonant so that it changes the pronunciation of the consonant. And that's all that you need to know for Dagesh Leni. Now we are on to the next lesson, lesson 15, Dagesh Forte. Forte means strong, in contrast to Leni, which means weak. Dagesh Forte is strong because it causes the consonant that it is written in to be doubled, that is, to be repeated. But Dagesh Leni only hardens the sound of the consonant or changes the pronunciation of the consonant. It does not cause it to be doubled or repeated. And as my Hebrew student pointed out to me, Brother Solin, that Dagesh Forte also hardens the consonant like Dagesh Leni. It is something I had noticed, but it was never really brought out to me, but I noticed it. I didn't want to say anything about it, but that's what I noticed, but Brother Solin brought that out. But the difference is what we're looking at here. Dagesh Forte is strong. Dagesh Leni is weak. And one of the reasons Dagesh Forte is strong is it causes the consonant that it is written in to be doubled. That is, the letter is repeated. It is written again and pronounced again. But all Dagesh Leni does is to harden the sound of the consonant, which results in a change in the pronunciation of that consonant. It does not cause the consonant to be doubled or repeated. Another difference between Dagesh Forte and Dagesh Leni is Dagesh Forte may be written in all of the consonants, including the consonants that Dagesh Leni can be written in. But Dagesh Forte cannot be written in the guttural consonants, Aleph, A, Keth, Ayin, and it cannot be written in Resh. Dagesh Leni, on the other hand, may only be written in 6 consonants, Vaith, Rimmel, Thaleth, Kaf, Fe, Thou. So Dagesh Forte is different from Dagesh Leni in that Dagesh Forte may be written in all of the consonants, including these consonants that Dagesh Lene is written in, except they cannot be written in the guttural letters Aleph, He, Kef, Ayin, and they cannot be written in Resh. But Dagesh Lene may only be written in Veth, Rimel, Thaleth, Kaf, Fe, Thao, these 6 consonants. So here it is again. Dagesh Forte may be written in all consonants, except the guttural consonants. That is the consonants pronounced in the throat. Aleph, He, Kef, Ayin. Dagesh Forte may not be written in the consonant Resh, and Aleph, He, Kef, Ayin, and Resh cannot be doubled or repeated. So you won't find Dagesh Forte, the dot, in any of these consonants, and they cannot be repeated. I'm about to change to the next slide. We now come to lesson, let's see, I think this is lesson 16, Mapik. Mapik is a Hebrew word. I've written it in English letters here. This is the Hebrew writing. It means, literally translated into English, bringing out. Mapik means bringing out. Well, what does it bring out? It brings out the full sound of He when the dot is put in it. So here's the dot in He. Now remember, this is a guttural letter. He is one of the guttural letters, and neither Dagesh Forte nor Dagesh Lene can go in He. So that is a relief for us, because if we see a dot in the middle of He, we will know right away that it is neither Dagesh Lene nor Dagesh Forte, for neither of these can go in a guttural letter. But Mapik can be put into He, and when it does, it brings out the full sound of He. It is only put in He. It doesn't go in any other consonant. So that also helps us to remember. The only consonant that Mapik goes in is He. We now come to lesson 17, Raphael. Raphael is a Hebrew word that means soft. The definition of Raphael is that it is a short horizontal line. Here is the horizontal line, placed over a letter. Here is a letter, to indicate that the doubling of that letter with Dagesh Forte is left out. So in the first verb here, bikeshu, meaning they sought, there is a dot in the middle of kof. But when Raphael is drawn over kof, you do not have Dagesh Forte anymore in kof. Notice the difference between the English spelling of the verb. In the first verb here, you have B-I-Q-Q. The kof corresponds to the Q in English. And notice you have 2 Qs, B-I-Q-Q, because it's doubled by the Dagesh Forte. And then you have the vocal schwa here, E, and you have the shin, which is SH, and you have the shurek, which is U, long U. So it's bikeshu. But when you put the Raphael over the kof, here's what you have. B-I-Q, so it's no longer 2 Qs, it's 1 Q. There's no longer a Dagesh Forte there, it's omitted. And so the kof is not doubled, it just remains one. And you have the vocal schwa, just like before, and you have the sh and the u, bikashu, but not two q's. So this happens for smoother pronunciation. So what is Raphael? It's a short horizontal line placed over a letter to indicate that the doubling of that letter with dagesh forte is left out.
Sir,
Yes.
a question. When we are reading like a Hebrew book or whatsoever, so the second form of Bikeshu will appear or the first one will appear? Which one of them?
Both of them will have the E, the vocal schwa.
No, I'm not like putting accent on this vocal shiva, but rather the kof, because first it was double, but when we have the rafe, it is we do not see the other kof. So for smoother pronunciation, we have just bikeshu instead of bikeshu. So I'm asking now which one of them will appear, because if I already have the second form, I wouldn't know that the first one existed at all. That's why
Yes. Well, what you would have is the first Q. The first Q. The second Q will not be there because the first Q has not been doubled here. So this is the first Q, the only Q.
All right. So it is as if we just try to know the origin of the word, or it becomes like this.
Yeah, B. You have B, B-I, B, K, shu. Whereas up here it was bik, K, shu. Okay, technically speaking, what you would have is a schwa right here, but it is silent. It's not to be pronounced. Because when you have a schwa coming at the end of a closed syllable, which consists of a consonant, vowel, consonant, it is not pronounced. It is the second schwa, which comes after the second Q, that begins, that can be pronounced because you're pronouncing a new syllable. So you have bik, keshu, bik, keshu, bik, keshu. Here you don't say bik, but you say bi, keshu, bi, keshu.
Yes, sir. Well, it seems as if we are not on the same ground yet. Let me break it down, sir. What I'm asking, like every language improves from time to time. So I'd like to know, like, if the first one were used back then, but for now we have the second form, which has only one Q, but the first one had two Qs. I want to know, like, why do we have both of them? Because is it like for the explanation that you bring the first one? Yes, I'm kind of confused in that manner. So I'd like to know.
All right, I'm just using both of them to illustrate what happens when you put a Raphael over the letter that has the dagesh forte. Now, the first one, it does not have a dagesh forte, does not have a Raphael over it. And if it doesn't have a Raphael over it and it has dagesh forte in it, then it will be doubled. But when you see this line over a consonant that would normally have a dagesh forte, but you don't see the dagesh forte, it means that this letter, this consonant, is not to be doubled. It doesn't have to be kof either. It could be some other consonant that would normally take dagesh forte in it. If there is no line over it, then the dagesh forte will be in the heart of the consonant. and the consonant itself would have to be doubled. But if Raphael is drawn over that consonant, if you see it in the Hebrew Bible, for example, that there is a Raphael that is drawn over that consonant that would normally take a dagesh forte, then it means that the letter would only be written down once in English. It would not be written twice.
Okay, sir.
So this is just to illustrate what happens when a Raphael is drawn over a consonant or a letter that has dagesh forte in it.
Okay,
Here,
sir.
the consonant is doubled, 2 Qs. There, with the Raphael drawn over the consonant, it only has 1 Q. The Raphael indicates that the dagesh forte is to be left out, and there is to be no doubling of that particular consonant. So notice the arrow. I drew an arrow here to show the difference between the two. It's the same verb, but written in 2 ways because there is a Raphael over it. Do you have any further question on that?
No, sir. I'm okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we now come to quiescent letters. We're still in lesson 17. Quiescent means to become quiet. And quiescent letters are consonants that are not pronounced under certain conditions, even though normally they are pronounced. And the vowel underneath those consonants that are not pronounced are also not pronounced. Therefore, since they are not pronounced, they become quiet when the word is being spoken. Okay, so this is dealing with definitions of quiescent letters and how they are used. We now come to the guttural letters and resh. Aleph, He, Keth, Ayin are guttural letters, that is, letters pronounced in the throat. What is said about Aleph, He, Keth, Ayin also applies to resh. The guttural letters and resh cannot be doubled, and therefore they do not take dagesh forte. They take composite shuwa instead of simple vocal shuwa. So if any of these consonants, these guttural letters and resh, do not have any vowel, customarily when a consonant does not have a vowel, there is to be a shuwa underneath it. But the guttural letters and resh cannot take the simple shuwa, which is 1 dot over the other. They take what is called composite shuwa, and this means that it is made up of the simple shuwa and a corresponding short vowel. So they take composite shuwa instead of simple vocal shuwa. Also, these guttural letters and resh prefer the vowel pathak. Here is the vowel pathak, a short a, under them and even before them. Number 5, they take a pathak under the guttural letter at the end of a word after a full accented vowel. This is called furtive pathak. So when you have a pathak under the guttural letter, which is at the end of a word, furtive pathak means that you're going to pronounce the vowel first. You're going to pronounce the pathak first and then the consonant. Usually in the Hebrew, you don't do that. In the Hebrew, usually you pronounce the consonant first and then the vowel. Yet even though the vowel is underneath the guttural letter that is at the end of a word, The furtive pathak, which it is called, means that you're going to pronounce the vowel pathak first, and after that you will pronounce the guttural letter that it is under. Okay, so this is information about the guttural letters and resh. Okay, let me move on. We're now in lesson 18, and we're dealing with correction of written errors by the reader. Corrections of recognized errors are made in the margin. So the margin would be either in the left or in the right-hand side of the page. So recognized errors are made in the margin, or they're made in the footnote, which is at the bottom of the page, while the uncorrected words are kept in the text. All right, this is a fact, and this is why when the translators are translating from the Hebrew Bible, the uncorrected words that are kept in the text are also translated, but it doesn't mean that it was not corrected in the margin. In the margin, you have the corrected words, the words that really should be there. And I think that is one of the disadvantages of our translations, that they don't put the corrected words in the margin. I think some modern translations may put the corrected word at the bottom of the page so that we may know what the correction was. But because the uncorrected words are kept in the text, you find that they are translated, but the corrections are found in the margin, the left margin or right margin, and the footnote. So a person may ask, why is it that the uncorrected words are not changed? It is because they do not want to give people the license or the permission to change the text when somebody feels that the text should be changed. They are afraid that if they do that, that there will be changes made in the text that should not be made. So the refusal to change the text is due to the respect for it and acts as a protection from deliberately corrupting it. Now, one of these words that commonly appear in the Hebrew text is the word Yehuwah. This is spelt out in English letters, not in the Hebrew letters. Y-E-H-O-W-A-H, Yehuwah. Now this appears 7,000 times, so it's often 7,000 times in the Hebrew Bible. You have God's personal name written as Yehuwah. This comes over into English as Jehovah. Y becomes J, E becomes E, H becomes H, O becomes O, W becomes V, A becomes A, H becomes H, and it gives you the name Jehovah. This is why you have Jehovah's Witnesses insisting that God's personal name is Jehovah and that we should address God by his personal name. The problem here with it is that they don't understand that when they read Yehuwah in the Hebrew Bible, even though it's written there in the body of the text, there is a reason why these vowels were placed between the consonants, E, O, A. E was placed between Y and H, O was placed between H and W, and A was placed between W and H. Now, these are the vowels of another Hebrew word, Adonai. And when the A comes between the Y and the H, it changes to an E. So you have this changing to an E, and this going in here as O, and this vowel going here as A. So when the reader sees this, the Hebrew reader knows, maybe not us, but the Jewish people know, that this is an impossible word in the Hebrew language. This is an error, an obvious error. But when they see the vowels of Adonai between God, the consonants of God's personal name, what this means to them is it's a signal to stop and to recognize that when they read this, they shouldn't read Yehuwah, they should read Adonai instead. So this is what is written, but this is what is read. Now, the reason why they do this is that they want to prevent the readers from calling out God's personal name. God's personal name is almost certainly believed by scholars of the Hebrew language to have been pronounced in one of two ways. Based upon the consonants YHWH, it was either pronounced Yahweh or Yahweh. But to prevent readers from calling out God's actual name, Yahweh or Yahweh, the vowels of Adonai, which means Lord or my Lord, was placed between the consonants of God's personal name, and it was to alert the reader that they were not to read this word, but to read another word, Adonai, instead. So this is not how God's personal name is spelt. It was written like this so that God's personal name would not be read, but that Adonai, meaning Lord, would be read instead. So in addition to correcting an error in the text, whether on the left side of the page or the right side of the page or at the footnote, another way is to put the correct word in between the consonants and to alert the reader to read another word instead. And I've used this since this appears all the time, well, most of the time. There is another way that this is also spelt. EOI is sometimes placed between these consonants, which I haven't really said here, and you won't be tested on it in the exam. EOI are vowels of a Hebrew word Elohim that means God. So whenever the reader should say God or read Elohim, he or she would see EOI between these consonants, YHWH, and it would be Yehuwah, which is a signal to stop and recognize there's an error in the spelling and that they should read Elohim instead of God's personal name, which also shows us then that this is not the way God's personal name is spelt, but it is used here to point out by inserting the vowels between the consonants what word should be read instead. The main thing I want you to remember from this, the correction of written errors by the reader, is that correction of recognized errors are made in the margin, whether it's the left margin or the right margin, and also in the footnote. And the uncorrected words are kept in the text. And the reason for this is due to the respect for it and to prevent people from deliberately changing the text. We now come to the definite article. There is no word for the indefinite article in Hebrew. A or an is not expressed. For example, melech, which means king or a king. Ayin, which is I or an I. The context implies that the word is indefinite. The definite article the is said to have been originally hal, hey, pathak, lameth, like the Arabic al. when attached to the word it defined. For example, Hal Melech, the Lameth, which had no vowel under it, became part of the next letter Mem. That is, it was absorbed by Mem and it disappeared and caused the Mem to be doubled with Dagesh Forte, which was indicated by a dot in the center of Mem, producing Ham Melech, the king. Therefore, the first rule of the definite article is the definite article before an ordinary letter. And by ordinary letter, I mean a letter that is not a guttural, a letter that is not Aleph, He, Keth, Ayin, and a letter that is not Resh, is Ha, He, Pathak, followed by Dagesh Forte in the first consonant of the word. Ham Melech. The consonant is doubled because of Dagesh Forte. It's called Dagesh Forte compensative to compensate for the loss of Lameth, which has become absorbed or assimilated or become a part of Mem, and to indicate that there has been a loss of that letter, there is the doubling of the first letter of the word Melech. So it's Ham Melech, the king. The definite article before an ordinary letter, a letter that is not a guttural, is Ha, followed by Dagesh Forte. Now let us move on to the next one. The second rule concerning the definite article is this. When the definite article comes before a guttural, Aleph, He, Keth, Ayin, or comes before Resh, since these letters cannot be doubled, certain changes in the vowel of the definite article have to be made. So, rule number 1 concerning when the definite article comes before the weak gutturals. The weak gutturals are Aleph and Ayin. I suppose they're called weak because they don't really have a pronunciation. So the definite article before the weak gutturals Aleph, Ayin, and before Resh will cause the vowel of the definite article to be lengthened from Pathak to Kames. So it will be lengthened from A to A. So there is a compensation here. Since I cannot double Aleph or Ayin or Resh, then this vowel underneath He in the definite article will have to be lengthened to its corresponding long vowel. So short A is lengthened to long A. So it will now read as Ha instead of Ha, Ha instead of Ha. So we have Ha-or, the light, Ha-ayin, the eye, Ha-rosh, the head. So notice the definite article before Aleph, the vowel under the He is Kames, not Pathak. The same is true with the definite article before a word that starts with Ayin. It will be Kames underneath the He, not Pathak. And before Resh, it will be Kames also under He, not Pathak. So the rule is the definite article before the weak gutturals, Aleph, Ayin, Aleph, Ayin, and Resh will cause the vowel of the definite article to be lengthened from Pathak to Kames, from A to A, from short A to long A. Another rule is the definite article before the strong gutturals, and the strong gutturals are he and keth. He and keth will have no lengthening of the vowel of the definite article, since Dagesh forte is said to be implicit in the harsh sounds of these gutturals. So even though these gutturals are not doubled and they don't take the Dagesh forte, because they have a strong, harsh sound already, it is as if they have the Dagesh forte in them, but they don't actually have it. And so since it is like they have the Dagesh forte already, there is no need to lengthen the pathak under the he of the definite article to its corresponding long vowel. So any definite article that comes before a word that begins with either he or keth will have no lengthening of the vowel of the definite article. For example, ha hekal, ha hekal. Now notice there's no Dagesh forte in here, but there's no need because this is a strong guttural. So it doesn't need Dagesh forte to become strong. It's strong in itself. It's like it has the Dagesh forte there, even though it's not there. So there's no need to compensate by having this lengthened from pathak to kames. It remains pathak, ha hekal, the palace, or ha koshek, meaning the darkness. So there's no lengthening. So the rule is the definite article before the strong gutturals he and keth will have no lengthening of the vowel of the definite article. Okay, I'm going to be moving to the next slide. Rule number 3, before an unaccented ah and ha, that is, there is no accent over the ah and the ha, and always before ka, the definite article is he. Okay, here are examples. He harim. Notice there is no accent here. The accent usually is on the last syllable. This is the last syllable. So this is the first syllable of the word, he harim. Notice the vowel changes from pathak to segol, short e. He harim. So this is not accented. And so when the definite article comes before a word that starts with ha, and there is no accent over it, then you have the vowel pathak changing to segol. He harim, the mountains. You may wonder what this is. This is metheg, bridle. It's a pause. It comes 2 syllables before the accented syllable. He harim, the mountains. He afar. Notice this is unaccented also. The accent is usually on the last syllable. He afar. So the vowel has to change from pathak to segol. Ha, he afar, the dust. He kakam. Again, the accent is usually on the last syllable. Here's the last syllable. So this is unaccented. So the vowel underneath this definite article here, he, is going to be segol. He hakam, the wise man. Rule number 4, before an accented ha and ah, don't get it confused now. This was unaccented ah and ha. This is now accented ha and ah. Same syllable, but now it has an accent. The definite article is ha. It has the kames under it. So you have hahar, the mountain, ha hara, to the mountain. Okay. And that's the end of that. Let me just make sure that there's nothing else after that. I think that's the end of this, yes. So all you need to do in this revision lesson is just to use it to revise all the lessons we have looked at this trimester. It has all the necessary information you need to remember in order to do well in your final exam. Your final exam in Beginner's Hebrew Language, Year 2, is next week, Friday, December 10, at the normal time that you have this class, that is at 10:30.
Yes, sir.
Any question that you have over what we have revised?
No, sir.
Anyone else? Israel, do you have any question?
No, sir, I don't have any questions, sir. Thank you.
Anybody has a question? Now make sure if you don't have this revision PowerPoint lesson, let me know as early as you can. Email me, let me know so I can send it to you. Okay, at this time we're going to be closing. So I wish you well as you prepare yourselves for next week's week of final exams. You may treat the final exam like a regular test that you do. It's within the same class time that we have. And it's like taking another test. Just use these revision lessons and you don't have to feel scared or nervous. Read this and reread this and reread this. And don't wait for the night before to start revising.
Yes.
Unless you have a great brain, don't try that. The average brain can't take that kind of thing. Make sure you give yourself enough time to let the information sink into your head. Okay, we're going to close at this time. So take care.
Yes, sir.
And
Same to you.
God bless you all.
All right, sir.
Yes.